Myself Aditya P. Tripathi. I am once again here with you to continue our discussion on the topic of financial shenanigans. This is going to be part 2 of our lectures on financial shenanigans. In the first lecture, that is the previous lecture of mine, I told you about the basics of financial shenanigans, the background, the motivations, and now we'll extend our discussion about the motivations and then opportunities, and after that we'll tell you about the different techniques of shenanigans. So I told you previously that there can be a motivation of performance based compensation, there can be earning expectations, there can be tax evasion, raising funds, concealing companies' poor financial health, or diversion of funds. Before I go ahead with the opportunities, I would like to explain two of these motivations. First is tax evasion. A company may go for tax planning, and remember, tax planning is not wrong, it is always allowed. Even the system says that if you wish to plan your taxes, and by the way of tax planning, if you are able to reduce your tax burden, there is no problem, it is legal. Tax planning is not illegal, it is legal. But yes, tax avoidance is not good, it is not legal, and one should not resort to tax avoidance. So at times companies, when they go for reducing their tax burden, they sometimes or at times try to reduce their profit so that the tax can be saved and the tax burden can be reduced. So tax evasion is a very prominent and very popular motivation when a company is resorting to this financial shenanigans. Diversion of funds. If you talk about Satyam, Satyam Computers Limited, which is a noted, a very popular, financial fraud in India, and there the company was doing, it was actually, diverting its funds to its subsidiary called Maitas Limited, Maitas Infrastructure Limited. So, since they have diverted their fund to the other company, obviously what is happening, this fund which you have, the hole which you have created, to plug it up, what you are doing, you are resorting to shenanigans. So company, on one hand, what it did, it actually transferred the entire capital of or the significant part of your capital to the subsidiary company, diverted their funds to other companies off the records, and to plug up that holes, they went for fuzzing the data, they went for creating the bogus fixed deposit certificates and all. So if you go to the Satyam fiasco or the Satyam scam, you will find that it was one of the reason that they diverted funds, and cause of that, for diversion of funds, it was a motivation that they wanted to divert, and this was another way of resorting to financial shenanigans. Now the question comes, if a person is trying to play with the accounting process, can he or she do? Answer is no, but yes, there are certain flexibilities in accounting which are making it somehow possible for them to resort to these shenanigans. But sooner or later it is caught. It's not like that nobody can catch it. If the audit is being done, then obviously they are identified, and that is why these cases are in front of us. We should not take it in a negative way that a company is committing fraud, so company's image is going to tarnish. No, if a company has committed fraud, action has been taken, it means the company was not well versed into that fraud process. That is why the fraud was caught, and they were not resorting to it for long. And that is why the moment they resorted to it, the auditor could find it out, and the action was taken. The stringent action is taken there. The law is very stringent for these kind of frauds and scams across the globe. I'm not talking about India only. Even across the globe, this scenario is there. So when we talk about accounting flexibilities, it is always said that our IFRS, that is International Financial Reporting Standard, it is not giving much of options to the management accountants, but still there are certain accounting flexibilities. If you talk about the depreciation itself, if I take example of one item, that is called depreciation. Now estimated life of plant is calculated by you, that is me and you, and here comes the subjectivity. So that is providing you flexibility to reduce or increase the burden of depreciation. That is called accounting flexibility. The same can be exercised for the fair valuation, which is actually the backbone of our entire IFRS. So fair valuation, it is really very difficult to call what I am doing in my perception, in my way it may be fair, but on the other hand, when it comes to you, you may call it unfair. If we talk about the valuation of goodwill, if we talk about the inventory valuation, that which method to resort to. So depending upon our motivations, some of the accountants, they are resorting to these shenanigans by using accounting flexibilities. Although with the emergence of IFRS, it has been reduced. The possibility of shenanigan has been reduced to very less, very low. But still, there is a latest article in 2016 with the Harvard Business Review that says that how to deal with these shenanigans in the era of IFRS, when we have international financial reporting standards. Still, if some frauds are coming, what are the gaps? Where are the gaps? So that also I'll be discussing in due course of our deliberation. I'll tell you about those cases also. But yes, accounting flexibility is one of the reasons for which all regulatory bodies across the globe, they are working. They are relentlessly working to eliminate the possibility of misuse by accountants by the way of using these accounting flexibilities. Another is weak internal control. And this is something which is always a point of concern by the auditors. Whenever an auditor goes to any company for audit, the first and foremost step which they take is they actually try to identify the magnitude of or the system of internal control in a company, whether it is weak, it is strong, or it is moderate. And depending upon the internal control, they decide their modus operandi of audit. So weak internal control is another way. When we talk about internal control system is a system where the work of one person is being audited by, being checked by another one, so that there is a control over a person, because absolute power corrupts a person absolutely. So there is no absolute power with one person. When the power is divided, when the authority is divided, then obviously work of one person may automatically be checked by another one. So if a company is having a strong internal control system, it means it has definitely ensured that power is not vested in one person absolutely, because we all know absolute power corrupts a person absolutely. So if a company is having weak internal control, then obviously it will actually be very fertile for that accountant to resort to financial shenanigans. Third is lack of auditor's independence. Auditor is supposed to be independent, because we call it external audit, we call it statutory audit. And remember, when an auditor is coming to the company, auditor is not at all on the rules of the company. He is not the employee of the company, or she is not the employee of the company. They are supposed to be independent in their opinion. But we cannot deny to the possibility of the fear in the mind of auditors, which is actually known as the loss of consultancy. What if the auditor is not listening to the company's management, and what if the auditor becomes very stringent, or he or she goes for issuing a qualified report, and eventually what happens in the board meeting? They are ousted. They are not given, their assignment is not being extended. So that is also a fear which actually questions the independence of an auditor. So lack of auditor's independence, it has been observed as one of the opportunities, or as one of the method resorted by the companies towards shenanigans. Poor governance structure. There can be a poor governance structure. As far as our country is concerned, we have stringent rules and regulations, but yes, wherever there is a shenanigan in a company or in an enterprise, another reason after this accounting flexibility, weak internal control, and lack of auditor independence is given as is called as poor governance structure. That can also be a reason for these shenanigans. Now, when we talk about shenanigan, it sounds to be very negative, all negative, fraud, scam, fraud, window dressing, creative accounting, aggressive, and you feel that, sir, why everything is negative? Obviously it's a negative act, that's why everything is negative. But there are certain positive aspects of window dressing. What is that positive aspect? That your company may remain protected from takeovers. Nobody is going to take to acquire your company if a company is going for this window dressing. Then and why I am saying so, I am just telling you this, I am just quoting this statement because this is the opinion of that company. It is not my opinion. They assume that if my financial position will remain strong in the eyes of the stakeholders or the outsiders, nobody will come to acquire us. But the moment our weakness is being exposed, anybody or someone may come for acquisition. This is their perception. It is improving share valuations. They say that we are increasing our market price per share by doing so. If you talk to them, they will tell you about the positivity of it. All the people who are involved into it, when they are caught and they are being interrogated, they give this kind of answer, that it gains shareholders' approval. Shareholder is very happy when the company is showing the good financial performance of the company. So these are the positive aspects of window dressing, but we should not assume it as one of the positive aspect to it. If we talk about financial shenanigans by an authority in forensic accounting, there is a term called forensic accounting, where we do have forensic auditing also. Howard M. Shillett, he is an authority in this area, in this field of financial shenanigans. He authored a book in 2010. And the title of the book was How to Detect Accounting Gimmicks and Fraud in Financial Reports. And this book was published in 2010. And from that book, I am quoting here, there are 7 shenanigans which are popularly called as Shillett's 7 shenanigans. After this, after telling you about what Shillett was talking about shenanigans, I'll tell you about the different popular techniques like round tripping, I'll tell you about channel stuffing, I'll tell you about cookie jar accounting, and then I would actually give you the live examples also, that what exactly happened in that case of round tripping, what was there into channel stuffing. So let us talk about Shillett's 7 shenanigans. There are 7 shenanigans. They were talking about recording revenues too soon, or recording bogus revenue, boosting income with one-time gains, shifting current expenses to a later or an earlier period, failing to disclose all liabilities, and shifting current income to a later period, shifting future expenses into a current period. So according to Shillett, these are the ways by which an accountant resorts to shenanigans. I'll tell you one by one. Shenanigan number 1 as per Shillett. Recording revenue too soon. Too soon means you are actually trying to prepone your revenue. You are trying to show your revenue which you are supposed to receive in future. So you are actually trying to you are playing with the timing of revenue. There can be 2 ways of playing with the revenue. One is time, another is quantum. Here you are trying to play with the timing. Your revenue is due, you will receive it in future, but you are trying to show your revenue too soon. So recording your revenue too soon, it means you can go for shipping goods before the sale is finalized. Your customer has not finalized the sales, but you have shipped the goods to the customer. So you are shipping goods before sale is finalized. This is one way of resorting to the shenanigans. It may seem very natural to you that goods are being sold, customer has demanded for the product, company might have shipped it to the customer, but the ground reality is that the sale was not finalized. Customer did not approve it. Still you have shipped goods to the customers before sale, and this actually amounts to a shenanigan where you are recording your revenue too soon. You are recording revenue when important uncertainties exist. There is an important uncertainty. You never know what is going to be in future, whether this business will continue or not, whether your customer will be able to make payment or not. And amid that uncertainty, you are trying to record revenue. You don't know whether your customer will pay or not, but you are recording your revenue in your books of accounts. So you yourself are not certain about your income, and still you are recording your revenue. What is the intention? What is the motto? Motive is you are recording revenue too soon. You are actually trying to change the timing of your revenue. You are trying to recognize your revenue before it is actually should be recognized. Or there can be another way of recording revenue when future services are still due. You are recording revenue today, but the service you will be offering in future. It is very much popular in case of automobile companies. When they are buying their cars, they are actually giving you extended warranty, and for that extended warranty they are charging some money, or if they are not charging, some amount is allocated for it. Remember that extended warranty money cannot be recognized as revenue by the company unless you offer that service to your customer. So it should be, considered as revenue in subsequent year. But what these companies are doing, whatever price they are charging from you as a customer, if they have to show their profitability, if they have to, get some benefit out of it, then obviously they record their revenue when future services are still due. It is one of the most popular example, which is being adopted by most of the automobile companies. But auditors, they actually keep an eye on it, and that is why in IFRS it has now been clarified that when you go for recognizing your revenue, understand that extended warranty plus whatever interest you are charging, interest should be charged separately, your warranty service charges should be charged separately, and the cost of that car which you are selling out, that should be charged in a separate manner. So it was not earlier. Now it has come to the practice, cause the accountants have realized that this was a flexibility which we were giving to our accountants. So that is why if I talk about the IFRS or Ind AS, as far as India is concerned, there is a clear cut standard for it in terms of recognition of revenue, that you should not record your all revenues today when it comes to automobile industry. You have to segregate your different types of income, and that is the beauty of your IFRS, because accounting is no more accounting, it has now become financial reporting. You are reporting to your stakeholders, and that is why you have to keep an eye on what you are reporting. It should not be misleading in any way. Shenanigan number 2. Now I'll tell you about the shenanigan number 2, which talks about recording bogus revenue. Having said bogus revenue, I wish to indicate that revenue doesn't belong to you. You are recording income in exchange for similar asset, the same asset which you already had, and for the similar asset you are recording income again, or in exchange of that you are recording. So recording bogus revenue can be exemplified by this, that you are recording an income in exchange for similar asset. You have the same asset, and for same asset you are trying to show the income. Recording refunds from suppliers as revenue. You sold out your you purchased some goods from some suppliers, and you returned it, and those suppliers have now given you refunds. So can you show that refund as your revenue? Answer is no. It is not your revenue. It is something which you have already paid, and that money has come back to you. So recording refunds from suppliers as revenue in accounting, if you look at it from the perspective of an accountant, there is no harm in showing it as income. But when we talk about financial reporting, it is trying to give a wrong impression about the company to the shareholder. So that is why we classify it as an example of recording bogus revenue. You are using bogus estimates on interim financial reports. Bogus estimates you are presenting when it comes to financial reporting. Like in case of all listed companies, you have to show your interim report every quarter. So quarterly performance need to be reported by the company. What is the purpose behind it? So that your potential investors or your stakeholders, they should keep an eye on your performance, that what should be my future action. And for that, what if you are using bogus estimates on interim financial reports? So shenanigan number 2 is telling you the ways by which the company may resort to record bogus revenue. The third number was talking about boosting profits by selling undervalued asset. You have an undervalued asset. You are trying to boost your income with one-time gains. There is a one-time gain, cause you cannot sell it again. So you have some undervalued asset. Suppose you have a property, you have an asset which has no value in the market, and you are trying to increase your profit by selling that undervalued asset. And since it is a one-time gain, in one quarter or in that particular year, your company may your financial performance may improve. But what about future? If you don't clarify that this income has come from the sale of property, obviously the shareholder or the investor may not come to know that this is not coming out of your operations, this is coming out of your investing activity. You have invested some money into some asset, you are selling out those assets, and that money is coming to you. Cause of that, sale, it is coming as a sale proceed. So you need to report it. So boosting income with one-time gains is not going to work for long. And some companies, when they resorted to it, and if they do so, it is nothing but a shenanigan, another way of shenanigan. Boosting profits by retiring debt. You are retiring your debts. Failing to segregate non-recurring activities. You are not making a segregation between recurring and non-recurring activities. You need to do so. So this is another way of resorting to shenanigan as per Shillett. Number 4 was talking about shifting current expenses to later period. Now when I say I'm shifting my current expenses to later period, it means what is my objective? I'm trying to, my income is not that much, so I'm just trying to trying to defer my expenses for future. So this is another way of resorting to shenanigans, that I'm shifting my current expenses to a later period, and which is it is not right, because accounting says that we have to follow the accrual concept. Whether the income is received or not, or whether expenses is actually incurred or not, if it is due on due basis, you have to recognize it, you have to show it. And that is why we are making provision for outstanding expenses, prepaid expenses, accrued, unaccrued. All adjustments in our final account, they are outcome of this only, that we are following accrual concept. But what if you are shifting your current expenses to a later period? Obviously your intention is not good. Intention may be to improperly capitalize your cost. We are trying to improperly capitalize our cost, which is not acceptable. Depreciation or depreciating or amortizing cost too slowly. My asset is having a life of 10 years. I assume that it will continue for 20 years. The moment I increase the timing, what will happen? The per annum cost will get reduced. So you are depreciating or amortizing very slowly. It means you are trying to shift your current expenses to a later period. And here, my dear learners, this you are able to do cause of accounting flexibility. This you are doing cause of that flexibility which you are enjoying, and that is why there is a big full stop to all these shenanigans in the name of fair valuation. Whatever day, whatever year you are estimating as on account of life of your plant, that need to be a fair valuation. So we have to understand that you are depreciating or amortizing, that is fine, that is allowed. It is correct that you are charging depreciation, but what about the amount of depreciation? Is it justifiable? Can you justify that? And if you are not doing so, this is also a kind of shenanigan, which some accountant, they feel that out of innocence they have done. See, if out of innocence you have done, then obviously it need to be corrected. Auditor will give you suggestion, you may rectify. But what if your intention is to increase, to show the greater amount of profitability in the eyes of shareholders, in the eyes of general public? It means you are not reporting what exactly the situation is. You should report what exactly you are facing. If company is making loss, incurring loss, report it to the shareholders, report it to the stakeholders. If company is doing good, then obviously it should be reported in that way only. If company is not doing good at all, you should not report. You should not go for misreporting. There should not be any wrong reporting. That is something which is actually the base for our discussion when we talk about shenanigans. We should never distort the real performance. We should show what exactly the company is witnessing. You are failing to write off worthless asset. You have some worthless asset. You have all, on the asset side of your balance sheet, you have all fictitious assets. You have all intangible assets. It means you are not able to write off the worthless asset. Many a times I ask my learners that if a company is showing goodwill in the balance sheet, whether it is good or bad, and they are saying, sir, goodwill is good. No. If a company is showing goodwill in the balance sheet on the asset side, it means the company could not find any other asset to complete the accounting equation, because accounting equation says your balance sheet will only tally when the asset is equal to capital plus liabilities. You have capital, you have liabilities, but you don't have sufficient amount of asset to show. So what you did, you have shown your goodwill, that this is my goodwill. You have some fictitious assets, you have some primary expenses which you incurred on account of establishment of your company. You could not write it off. What is the reason behind that? You could not write it off because you were not having sufficient amount of profit to write this expense off from your profit and loss account. So if you are failing to write off worthless asset, it means you are actually showing a balance sheet where the worthless asset is being shown. Can you sell out your expenses? Can you sell out your the fictitious assets? Answer is no. Then why are you showing it? Why are you carrying that burden of those assets into your balance sheet? You should not do so. So shenanigan number 4 talks about shifting current expenses to later period, whereas the shenanigan number 5 talks about failing to disclose all liabilities. You have number of liabilities, but you did not disclose it. That is another way of resorting to shenanigans. And it can be in any form. It can be in the form of failing to accrue expected or contingent liabilities. You have some contingent liabilities you're not showing. Reporting revenue when cash is received in advance of providing services. Failing to disclose all material commitments and contingencies. You have some contingent liability you're not reporting. So liabilities, if you're not reporting, that may also resort to shenanigans. Number 6 talks about shifting current income to later period. Now this is opposite to what you were doing in point number 5. Now you are shifting your income to the later period. It means the person might have resorted to big bath accounting. I'll tell you about that technique also. When a company is incurring loss, it is just like a student is not having any hope of passing the exam. So he or she thinks that once I'm supposed to fail in this exam, why to bother about other subjects also? So you are taking a big bath that either I fail in one subject or I fail in all subjects, it hardly matters to me. Just like that, some accountants feel that if a company has incurred loss, why shouldn't we go for taking a big bath? So you are shifting your current income to later period, and obviously expenses will stand there. So in current year, the amount of loss may be on the higher side. So creating reserves and releasing them into income in a later period. This is also a way of resorting to financial frauds, or you can say shenanigans. Number 7, which is the last one by Shillett, it talks about shifting future expenses to current period. Now you must be thinking what they are doing. Either they are shifting their current expenses to future or future expenses to current. Obviously they are somehow playing within the corridors of the debit side and credit side of profit and loss account and liability and asset side of your balance sheet, because this is the area where they can work upon. So shifting your future expenses to current period is another way of resorting to these shenanigans. You are accelerating your discretionary into the current period. So your future expenses are there and you are trying to show them in the current period, cause you might have some motive behind that. You wanted to show the lesser amount of profit in the current year, and cause of that you resorted to it. You are writing off future years depreciation and amortization during the current year. You are supposed to, now here it is opposite to what we were doing previously in point number 6. Earlier you were increasing the life of the machinery and reducing the burden of depreciation. Here you go for opposite action. You reduce the life of machine. Suppose life of machine is 10 years, you make it 5 and double the amount of depreciation, so that in initial years you are trying to show the lesser amount of profit. That is the motive. So according to your motive, a person may resort to the different ways of different types of shenanigans. So these were 7 types of shenanigans which were actually explained by Howard Shillett, and he in his book has actually explained these 7 types of shenanigans, which I thought appropriate to discuss here. And after this, what I'll tell you about the different techniques of financial shenanigans. In the next lecture, I'll tell you about the revenue recognition, both timing and quantum. I'll tell you about round tripping, channel stuffing, under provisioning of expenses and losses or liabilities, and obviously the big bath accounting, cookie jar accounting. So those popular techniques I'll tell you in the next lecture of mine. I hope you must have got a brief idea about what financial shenanigans are, what Howard Shillett was talking about. And with this, I end my today's lecture. Thank you so much.